Our philosophy was always invest in the people. It's never really the business itself. It's not the plan and how they're going to execute, it's the people itself. And the ones that always exceeded expectations, where we got a return on our investment, were the ones that understood how to navigate all those challenges, bring in the right people, collectively give them the keys to the business, to run the business and be okay with decisions they may not agree with all the time, but they knew it was in the greater good of the business. It was going to be a success. And that's a hard line to draw sometimes for entrepreneurs, but the ones that are most successful are the ones that have that ability to recognize that and bring on team members and work as a big team.
Commissioner Stuart McWhorter, the current Tennessee Economic Commissioner, past Commissioner of Finance and Administration, former private equity entrepreneur, and past Nashville Entrepreneur Center CEO, and I could go on. A career that really amplifies public, private, and nonprofit service, and one I believe many would say exemplifies the definition of servant leadership. My name's Suzanne Reed, LBMC's Chief Marketing Officer and your host for Make It Count. In this episode, Stuart and I explore how entrepreneurship is like sports and how leading with an intent of making things better for the people and the business that you work with has been a mantra that started with he and his dad, Clayton McWhorter. You will also hear what Stuart's super skill is, one that many in leadership don't always have. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you here today to talk on the LBMC podcast. I start out every podcast with a similar question. Just imagine you've got 3 months left until you retire. What are your priorities as a leader? What are you going to be thinking about?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, and congratulations to LBMC for 40 years. That's remarkable.
Yes, it is.
It's been fun to watch the firm grow, for so many years, and we've been involved with whether it was businesses we've had, or I know a lot of the people over there, and it's just a great group of folks and great story. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's great y'all are doing this. So I guess I'm a big believer in succession planning. So, whether that's in the public sector or the private sector, I think we all should have some level of succession planning. So I would hope, 3 months out that I would have that buttoned up pretty well. That's kind of number one. I also think as part of succession planning is around, leadership is also around your strategy, whether that next leader or management team wants to adopt that playbook. I do think having one in place just in case is always a good thing to do. And it just keeps continuity with your team. And if whoever would ever succeed me, wanted to utilize that, a portion of it, none of it, that's their option, but at least there's something that they had that they could utilize, for some period of time. I found, when I went into as Commissioner of Finance and Administration and now doing the second stint with the governor as economic development, it takes a good year and a half, 2 years maybe to get kind of your legs under you. And I've felt like even with ECD, I had a little bit of a head start, but it's taken me a while to really get a full grasp of what's going on. So having previous plans to adopt and sort of go with was really helpful. So I believe in that as well. And I think the other component that I feel is really important would be are the people that are with you better off, with what you left them with? Did you find the workplace? You're leaving it better than you found it? Are the people better, not just because of me in this case, but because of us and the things that we did together? I think that's really important, investing in people and giving them opportunity to grow, ultimately enjoying what they do, making it fun, as well as obviously hard work and dedication. But, I think those are all really important things that you want to leave behind.
I like that. Make it better than you found it.
Mm-hmm.
So good philosophy.
Yeah.
You have a lot of experiences in the private and the public, but you kind of started out with some early entrepreneurship, right? So the experiences that impacted your leadership style, what would you say those are?
Entrepreneurship is so varied. I mean, it's a combination of passion. What I found in most people that I've worked with over the years is that they are motivated by something that has caused them a problem, whether it's personal, whether it's in business. They recognize there's something out there that needs to be fixed, and they have felt that personally or professionally and so they're motivated by some things like that. I use sports as a analogy for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship in a lot of ways can be a single individual sport.
Right.
A tennis or a golf, you're the entrepreneur and, there's a problem out there and I'm going to go figure out how to solve it. Somehow along the way though, once you've created your business and you're beginning to get some traction, you've got to convert into this individual sport to a team sport. The ones that don't convert that over have a really challenging time because they likely may not value the team as much as their individual. When I played football, it was always team versus me. You have to figure out how to navigate that. Now, some entrepreneurs may keep their business super small. It could be a sole proprietorship, really, for that matter. And if that's the case, good for them. They may have just one team member. But if you're growing out a management team and you've got lots of employees, you got to have that ability to convert, the ability to either hand it off to somebody that knows how to run the business and you can be the expert in the room on the product or service, but you've got to recognize the value of team in that. Clayton Associates, Dad and I started that business in 1996, and our philosophy was always invest in the people. It's never really the business itself. It's not the plan and how they're going to execute. It's the people itself. And the ones that always exceeded expectations, and in our case, in venture capital, where we got a return on our investment, were the ones that understood how to navigate all those challenges, bring in the right people, basically give them the keys, collectively give them the keys to the business, to run the business and be okay with decisions they may not agree with all the time, but they knew it was in the greater good of the business. It was going to be a success. And that's a hard line to draw sometimes for entrepreneurs, but the ones that are most successful, at least in my case and experience that I've seen, are the ones that have that ability to recognize that and bring on team members and work as a big team. And that's hard to do for a lot of folks, but it's certainly applicable to business.
Absolutely. So with your, I'm going to call it corporate finance, strategic planning, kind of entrepreneur background, do you think there's a competency or a skill that's really leads itself to a bigger impact for leadership?
So I can speak just obviously from my own perspective. I never considered me the smartest guy in the room, particularly in high school and college. I was the one person that stayed late in the library or had to cram for things, not just cram like within an hour, like for days just to get something what was probably simple to others. I remember I had a roommate in college that never studied, never went to class, and he, graduated with, every, award you can think of. He was just naturally gifted. I've just kind of figured out how to compensate for that over time. And one of the things that I picked up on early in my career, this was before I moved to Nashville, but I was, after I graduated from UAB in grad school, I worked for a large hospital system. And one of the first jobs I had was we were putting together a large physician group practice among our hospital and two other hospitals in the Birmingham market area. And my boss said, you know what, you do a really good job of listening. You can sit in a room, you don't even say anything, but you're listening to everything that's being said in the room, because when we get back from these meetings and I ask you, what'd you hear? What you tell me, I didn't hear those things, but you're giving me insights. And so I've kind of carried that on through my career, and I've come to realize that listening is maybe one of the most important things anybody can do. Listening can be somewhat confused as just doesn't have anything to say or may not understand the topic, and there's nothing that person wants to say. But for me, I'm taking everything in, and as part of that is listening, I'm trying to figure out, they may be right. Especially as I've gotten, older and more experienced in work, you tend, as we get older, we tend to have stronger opinions about things. And I've just always had this innate feeling that, what, I may have a strong opinion about that, and this may be the right way to go, but I got to hear what they have to say because I could be wrong. And it's amazing when you go in with that mindset, because in most cases, I may not be completely wrong and they may not be completely right, but the answer might be somewhere in the middle. And I've just sort of been able to, lead and manage work in that way. And I'm a collaborator. And I think that really sort of goes back to, what I was saying earlier about it's been going to school, and I went to college and and went to grad school, and it was not easy for me academically. I had to study, I had to work my butt off, and I sort of compensated in other areas to get better at it. And this is kind of how I landed with where I am, and that's just something I strongly believe in.
I think that's great because that's a little contrary to what people think leadership is about, right? So I love that you kind of said that, because I think you're probably giving some ahas to maybe some others who maybe step out there a little bit with their listening skills because they felt like they needed to be the one talking.
That's right.
In the room.
And I think that, and nothing wrong with it. For some people, that's just how they are and they're successful at that. I just think that what tends to happen is that people get talking and they start thinking this is the way it's going to be, and they're not taking in. They may be listening what somebody's saying, but they're not hearing it, and they're not taking it to heart to think for just a minute, if their ego would allow it, that they might be wrong.
I really like that, especially as someone who typically tends to listen a lot more in sitting rooms versus talking. I really like that. If you could go back and tell your younger self, what's one word of wisdom or coaching or thought you might talk about today?
So I'm a little contrary in this, because I know there's books been written about entitled, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. For me, I sweat the small stuff, and it's not a control thing. I truly believe that I've got to sort of pull back layers and get into the weeds on things, because I'm not going to understand. It goes a little bit back to what I was saying earlier about, listening to somebody because they actually, their views and opinions may be right, or there's something about what they're saying that you need to take notice of. And I feel that's also the same as sort of you sweating the small stuff, whether that's mentally, physically. I tend to get into the weeds on things because I feel like I have to do it to understand and respect whatever that job is or whatever that person is thinking. And so I sweat the small stuff. And ultimately, because there's a contrary view of that is, why sweat the small stuff? Because, ultimately it's going to be what it's going to be, and you're not going to you may not be able to change the outcome. And that's not why I do it. I'm not trying to change the outcome of something. I feel like I just need to understand. I need to have a better sense of the detailed issues in order to have an opinion or to lead in a certain way, because I have to get that in the weeds and roll up my sleeves on things.
And when you were younger, I would imagine people probably thought you were trying to be controlling. But as you're a leader now, do people think, okay, he's watching over my shoulder, and so you have to explain yourself? I
think so. I mean, I would hope today, it's sort of like I'm doing this so that I can help you do your job better, so that I can advocate for what you're advocating for. Or if getting in the weeds and I can see a different perspective and say, hey, I'm living in this a little bit now. Have you thought about this, a different way to approach it? Goes back to this sort of a collaborative approach. It's hard to respect somebody telling you what you should do when they've never done it. And I think that that's part of what this is, you got to kind of live in it for a while. I've got high school kids, college kids, and one out of college. And we talk often about careers and, what they want to do when they either are out or when they get out of school. And I tell them, I was like, you may take jobs you don't like, and it's a grind, and you might hate it. And it's hard. I mean, I was in it too. I remember having, moments early in my career, I was like, this is not what I want to do. But it's given you, a platform and a foundation to take the next step. And that's sort of getting into that, down in the weeds on things, grinding when you may not enjoy it, but understanding if you believe in it and you truly believe, God's got you in this place for these particular reasons, and there is a reason for it. You just got to have faith of that. Then, I think it works out. It has for me, at least.
Same conversations with my kids. Yeah. Lifelong learner, though, is a word I would probably use with you.
Definitely.
You're calling it collaboration, but I think there's an element of you enjoy the learning aspect of it too.
That's an absolute truth. I mean, I've had lots of jobs. I mean, if you look at my resume, it's varied and very diverse. And, I get in my job, I often get introduced and people read my bio, and I'm like, every time I'm like, gosh, I had a bunch of jobs. Usually that's frowned upon, but I think in the case, particularly what I'm doing today with economic development, I think all of those experiences give me, some interesting perspectives. And the governor was very interested in having me serve because of those reasons. We've known each other for so long. He just knew a lot of my background, so it's worked for me in this case.
I do think you're probably perceived as a selfless leader. I mean, you've been a leader of a nonprofit, you've startup investor, a public official, creating a legacy impact for thousands, not just for yourself. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But what motivates you daily?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I want to serve. My mother and my father, who both had huge hearts to serve, in lots of different capacities. They had their parents, both very poor. They broke all kinds of family records, with respect to serving the community and serving businesses. My mom was a nurse. Dad, he had an outstanding career with HCA, and we did Clayton Associates for a number of years. But there's so many other things, particularly with my dad, that he did that nobody even knew about. And he did it not for any, recognition. He just did it because he knew it was the right thing to do. And I fortunately grew up around that and saw that giving, you get a lot more out of giving. And it's just so rewarding. And so I've just been blessed to be in a position to do the things I've been able to do. I feel what I'm doing today for the state of Tennessee is, really being in a position to serve this great state. It's a job that I don't necessarily have to have. It's one that I want to have because I've been given that unique opportunity to serve. And I think it's just been ingrained in my DNA, from the day I was brought into this world. And, my dad left me, a lot of things to think about and, big shoes to fill. And I'm making him proud, but doing it in my way, and have my own stamp on it as well. And, but without my parents, the things that they instilled in me, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today for sure.
Well, as I said, thank you for your leadership, and you've been in your role 2 years now, about
Correct.
2 years,
yeah,
right?
2 years.
So what's a favorite part of your job?
Honestly, the best part of my job is its tangible results. When we go to a community and announce a project, most of our work is related to 70% actually of our announcements that we make from our department are expansion projects. So it's either companies that are here already in Tennessee, but they're adding new jobs, they're expanding. And then, of course, we have lots of businesses that move to Tennessee because they want to do business in Tennessee. But the best experiences are the ones where you go to a county, particularly a distressed county or an at-risk county, which is all defined by federal guidelines. It's usually a poverty, income level. There's a host of factors. But when you go to one of these communities who traditionally doesn't get these types of announcements, they don't have companies that are looking to expand or relocate to their community, and see the direct impact that has on those families. Now a family has an opportunity, for a real good job, high quality paying job, getting access to training to be able to have them prepared for those jobs of the future. Their children now having an opportunity, and typically you actually have conversations with families and say, this has the potential to change the trajectory of our own family. Those are actually real results. In government, there's a lot of things that go on. There's lots of programs. There's a lot of talk about different things. But in our department, we measure everything that we do, and we see the ROI. And ultimately, it's the family, that'll tell you why that's important for them and their children. And that's what makes this job so fun, is those experiences and stories and meeting those families. And, the mayors of all these counties and cities, they give you the same stories as well. So that's what makes it the best about what we do.
I love that, because that's the impact. So on people, right?
Right.
So basically,
that's it.
You love having that impact on people.
Well,
That's
I think,
awesome.
I sort of touching on faith, but, I think we're all called to make an impact. And, and I think that that's just part of what I feel like I've been blessed, in a lot of ways. And I feel like I've only got so much time on this earth, and what are you going to do with it while you're here? And I've been given these opportunities, and, when all this is done, I'm kind of interested and excited about what's next. And I don't know what that's going to be, but, I love business. I love Tennessee. I love the people of Tennessee. The opportunities that Governor Lee's given me to work with him has been enormous, and I'm thankful for that. And it's you look back at all the things I've done along the way and have this sort of as my part of my experiences. It's interesting to see where this could go, but it's been fun to do.
what would you say? And you've sort of answered it a little bit, but what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I think it's around being persistent and consistent with serving. I really hope that ultimately that's what I'm known for. But beyond just first and foremost is faith, but also my family. And we have 5 children. And, my wife and I, Leanne, we pour into them and want them to have as much opportunity as they can and they can get while they can, but also understand, that life's hard and no one's handing out trophies, every day. And, like a lot of these kids get for just showing up. And that's not what life's about. You got to show up, but you also got to, you got to get into it and work. And there's joy in that. Like the key is to find the joy in it. Dad used to always say, if you find a job and love it, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's so true. I think ultimately, though, serving is what gives me a lot of joy. And that's what I'm so grateful to be able to do now. And quite frankly, I feel like we had Clayton Associates for 20 years. And there was a lot of business lessons learned. And the skin got thicker and thicker, understanding that, this is a hard business and life throws curveballs. You got to be ready for everything. To be able to take all that experience and kind of turn it and then, teach people these things or give them opportunities to experience it, knowing that they're going to learn along the way. And maybe one day, the next commissioner of economic development or the next CEO of the Entrepreneur Center or whatever has that sort of service mindset in their heart and their mind and all the things that they do going forward. And people will benefit from that.
I really like that. So one last question, a fun question.
Sure.
So what would the commissioner be if tomorrow you could just do anything you wanted to do as far as a job?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm 56 and I feel like, my youngest is a freshman. So, I'm going to keep on going until at least she's off to college. But I love higher education. A lot of what we do today, we interact with institutions of higher ed, often around workforce. Obviously, getting that population of students out into the workforce and being productive, selfishly retaining as much as we possibly can in our state to work right here in our state. That's of interest to me. We really do a lot of work with research and development. Companies that are already spending a lot of their dollars here in our state, we want them to invest in our research and development assets in the state. So that typically draws you to institutions of higher ed. And so I don't know, is it teaching class? Is it being a dean of a business school or the chancellor of some, I don't know. Those are interesting things. Those are, again, it's another sort of page out of the serving, book. I often get questions, after I'm finished up with economic development, if I'd go back and get into venture capital. Probably not. I feel like I've done that before. If I did, it would be, to get my kids engaged in some way. But I feel like I did that for 20 years and it was a great time and a great opportunity, but I feel like that's just part of building that foundation to something else new, for me.
Well, I like that. Well, thank you very much. This has been very insightful.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun to do this.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, please follow, rate, review, and share Make It Count wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Learn more at lbmc.com/podcast.